Clay, here we are a decade plus later to talk about our final episode of Something Pretty. We are going to be talking about Deadwood, the movie. Originally, it was going to be titled Deadwood, Statehood, but they went with Deadwood, the movie. I think Statehood is actually a more interesting title than the movie anyway. But I don't know. How are you? Welcome back. We took a little bit of a break. We did some Patreon coverage. We covered Hitman, which Timothy Oliphant did after the cancellation of Deadwood, the series. Then we did the pilot for John from Cincinnati, Milch's first project after Deadwood ended. And then we did Luck, which was the Milch and Mann collaboration from 2012, I think. So now we're here. We're here to do the movie as our final bit of content for the Something Pretty podcast. How are you?
I'm good. We're finally back, and there's definitely nothing different about me. I definitely have not had any dental work done since then.
This is cold recovery. This is post-COVID cold recovery voice. That's all that I'm hearing. I don't hear any veneers.
Yeah, no veneers or nothing like that. It's just the way I've always sounded. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting. It came through a couple places. Not as bad as John Wick 4. Maybe we'll get into it. But the movie, if anything, has shown me the absolute devastation that 13 years can have on bodies. Dude, I cannot tell you how unprepared I was for this. I've never experienced, I don't know, maybe it's because the cast of this show, a lot of them were on the older end to begin with.
Yeah, they were on the end of their middle age, I think, at the start.
But I turn on the reboot of Frasier and I don't see Kelsey Grammer and go, "Oh, Jesus Christ!"
Yeah, I wonder.
I was shocked at how old everybody looked. I mean, I'm assuming they were bumping it up in places a little bit, but I don't think I guess I didn't realize how old Dayton Callie was when he was originally in Deadwood, because he looked ancient in this.
He does. I think that they my take was that they just weren't disguising that people were old in the way that maybe the Frasier reboot will, Sure. It's like they're not trying to make them look younger, because that kind of goes against what they're all talking about. But it was surprising. I was also just wondering what I had said, if it's like you just caught everybody on the sort of peak where the descent is very noticeable. It's not like you're going from 20 to 35 or anything like that. You're dropping off the cliff on the other side. I
will say, however, Gerald McRaney looks fantastic.
Yeah, he did.
he looked like he hadn't aged a day. Yeah, he kind of settled into that look, I guess. Mm-hmm. That late middle-aged look 15 years ago, and realized, if you just maintain this, you look the same until you die.
I'd say he looks better. In the flashbacks, he looks heavier than he does now. He looks like he's in better shape. Yeah. I'd say he popped on the treadmill and got some cardio in the intervening 13 years or whatever. So this is Deadwood, the movie. We will hopefully get to a deeper analysis of the movie than just, oh boy, everybody's fucking old. But this is it. This is the final thing for the Something Pretty podcast.
It was similar to the best analog that I can draw is probably Twin Peaks: The Return, because it had been 25 years since Twin Peaks went off the air, but even there, I don't feel like there was as uniformly such an age thing, as there was in this. There was a couple in that show where it's like, the log lady was dying in real life, and a couple of those, but generally, everybody looked kind of fine.
Yeah.
What's her name? Cheryl Lee didn't look like she was 19 anymore, clearly. But everybody looked all right. But in this, man, and I'm not saying this as I don't think they looked bad or anything. No, it's just I was shocked.
Yeah. Deadwood, the Oldening is the name of this movie. So let's, for the very final time, take a break. We'll play the music. We're going to come back and we're going to break down the very final piece of the Deadwood cultural event. It's Deadwood the movie.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
All right, this is it. Deadwood, the movie. It came out in 2019. directed by Daniel Minahan, written by David Milch. All the stars you know and love have returned, slightly older.
Well, except for one notable one.
Except for one. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Maybe we will. I think we will. In this one, as the residents of Deadwood gather to commemorate Dakota's statehood in 1889, saloon owner Al Swearingen and Marshal Seth Bullock clash with Senator George Hearst. I don't have a little blurb that's longer to read about the movie than that, but this is it. It's Deadwood. Clay, do you have any... Well, let's start with... I'll get the boring stuff out of the way first, and then I'll ask you about your history. So indulge me for a second as I go through all this stuff. I had to do all the research. So I know I had said in one of the podcasts I would talk about how the series wrapped up, and I'll try to do that kind of succinctly here. So at the end of the third season, Deadwood had been planned to go for 5 seasons at that point. And the main driver behind this is that I talked about this a little at the start of the show, is that Milch had a deal with Paramount because he had worked for CBS on his network shows. And HBO wanted to do Deadwood with him. But the simple bit of it is that the Paramount deal meant that anything that Milch created during this contract period was partially owned by Paramount. And so HBO doesn't fully own Deadwood, the series.
That shit is so weird.
Yeah, and so... I guess companies are willing to let you go make shows for other people as long as they get paid for it because you're under their rights of it. So the financial game plan was that HBO was willing to do this and to eat the somewhat exorbitant cost of Deadwood because it was a pretty expensive show to produce, knowing that if they got 5 series out of it, the last 2 series would be enough to repay what they had invested in the first 3 seasons when HBO was not making any money off of it. And so once the 3rd season ended, Milch started giving interviews, and he had gotten his deal to do John from Cincinnati with HBO, which HBO would own entirely at that point because it's outside the parameters of the Paramount deal. But Milch started giving interviews saying that he planned only, instead of 5 seasons, to do 4 seasons for Deadwood. So there was a lot of behind-the-scenes sort of hand-wringing about this, where HBO was sort of recognizing that Deadwood was not going to eventually make them any kind of money back on it. They were going to lose money through the course of the deal. And there started to be a little bit of friction about, well, if we're going to lose money, we're just going to have to wrap this up fairly quickly because we're not going to sink any more money into this if you're not interested in doing it. We're not going to let you run both shows at the same time. So let's figure out a way to get around this. And as the 3rd season wrapped up, eventually Milch had this sort of conversation that they talk about in the phone where he's talking to Chris Albrecht, who's sort of the executive for the HBO side, the business side. And he was in a meeting with Dane Callie, and Callie overheard Milch taking a phone call. And it said it was punctuated by David's mm-hms and no's, and it ended with David saying, "Okay, fuck it. Why don't we do none?" And this is what Callie says. When he hung up on Chris Albrecht, I said, "What the fuck was that?" And then he said, they told me to do 8 fucking episodes. I told them to fuck off. I said, "I know you told them to fuck off, but why don't we do the fucking 8 and then fucking say we need fucking 4 more? Why the fuck do we got to quit like this?" And he said, no, I don't like it. So what seems to have happened basically is that they started to have this disagreement about the number of episodes to do in the 4th season. And it's a whole bunch of he said, she said in the Deadwood Bible. But my ultimate take is that HBO and Milch both got to a point where they couldn't feel that they could reconcile anymore. Like, so that HBO had lowballed him with a low offer of episodes. Milch got a little bit offended, but he was also sort of over Deadwood at this point and kind of felt like this would be his way out. So he told them to fuck off. They never really reconciled it. And then Milch started talking to what seems in good terms, or like a sort of good thing to do, is he started warning the production team and the actors that the season probably wasn't going to happen because he wanted them to get other work. And HBO at that point said, well, we can't go back now because everyone's bailing on the series. And really Deadwood just kind of died with a whimper because no one wanted to reconcile after this big brouhaha blow up between them about the number of episodes. And it seemed like HBO wasn't interested because of the finance side, and Milch wasn't interested because he was kind of burnt out from the show at that point and wanted to do something else.
So part of it was he was telling the cast that it probably wasn't going to happen. And so they were getting other work, and so that told HBO that they weren't interested.
It told HBO that it's too much work to put this back together at this point because you're not going to get what you get. And ultimately, the final point on it is that Milch and HBO had a sort of damage control meeting where the series was already kind of dead, but at this damage control meeting, they decided that in 2007, which was like a year or two later, they were going to have two-hour Deadwood movies that would wrap up the series. So instead of a fourth season, they were going to do 2 movies. A lot of the producers in the Deadwood Bible said that this seems kind of bullshit that HBO was saying and that Milch was saying, because the cost of 2 movies would probably be more than even a shortened 4th season, because you have to break down the sets and rehire everybody and do all that stuff. Yeah. So they don't know how realistic that is, but that's the way that it kind of went out, was an expectation that Deadwood would get movies out of it. 2 of them. Never happened. Smash cut to 13, 14 years later, and we get our movie, the Deadwood movie, finally, after everything had come back together. But that's about it. So thank you for indulging me, but that's the background on how the show ended and why the movie took so long to come out and everything like that.
Do you know how the movie generated? Was it like a new regime over there that was interested, or was it just like enough time had passed and they were like, let's do this?
Enough time had passed, and David Milch was at the end of his career at this point, and it was kind of an agreement that this was the last hurrah. I think Milch views the show in hindsight as his masterpiece, and he felt an urge to at least wrap it up the way that he wanted to, or the way that he would attempt to wrap things up.
Was this the last thing that he did? Like, I mean, yes. I know he's still alive, but obviously he's not.
This is his last produced credits. And so the other thing that's going into the last bit of history is that David Milch's Alzheimer's has started to symptomize itself at this point.
Yeah.
The movie is only credited with Milch as a writer, but the Deadwood Bible goes into a lot of detail about how it was written as a committee with a lot of season 3 Deadwood writers coming back to work on it with him. His mind was not at a point where he could write scenes on the fly anymore while the movie was being produced. He was described as being very subdued and quiet during the production of it. The last thing I'll read from the Deadwood Bible is that this David Milch was not the same David Milch who could write up new scenes on the spot and explain them via parables or references to literature. By contrast, he was quiet, subdued, and dependent on the writers, Rita and Corrado and Minahan, and others to interpret his wishes. Dayton Cali thought Milch shouldn't have been there at all. He told others that he believed HBO had taken advantage of his friend's deteriorating mental state. Sometimes their conversations on the film set resembled an Abbott and Costello routine. Said Cali, I'd do a scene and go over to him, sit next to him on my director's chair, and I'd say, how was that? He'd go, what? I'd say, the scene. He said, what fucking scene? I said, the scene I just fucking did. He said, which one? I mean, this is after he's sitting in the chair watching me do the scene. It felt very fucked up. Dayton Cali didn't like the script either, and often thought it read like It read like David plus people trying to sound like David. It wasn't David's writing, he said. Anybody who tells you different is full of shit.
I really like, A, that Dayton Cali seems to just be Charlie Utter.
Yeah, he is life. Charlie Utter.
And B, he sounds like a fantastic guy. Like he sounds like a guy who's just like is down the middle all the time and is like going to
tells you the truth. He's a truth.
Yeah,
he's a
he
truth
tells
speaker.
You the truth.
Yeah.
He seems like the kind of guy where if he's your friend, he's going to go to bat for you forever.
Yeah, he is Charlie Utter. Really, that's basically what he is. Yeah, so I mean, that's all the background I wanted to give about it, and I'll go into just our opinions on it. If you have no history with the Deadwood movie, right?
Correct. Yeah. I knew it happened, but that was it. I didn't watch it when it came out, specifically because I hadn't finished the show.
Yeah,
and so I didn't know when I was going to get around to that, so I didn't watch the movie.
I watched it when it came out. It was an HBO release, obviously. It was an HBO film production. We had watched the series a couple times to that point. I had never thought that the movie was going to happen. I had been familiar with the series enough to know, like, to recognize how sort of bizarre it was that they actually produced the movie at that point.
Yeah.
Me and Amy watched it. I'd only seen it once prior to this rewatch, and my memory of watching it the first time was that was okay, but I don't think it needed to happen, really.
Interesting.
And so me and Amy both didn't like it enough to ever rewatch it. This was my second watch of the movie of all time, but it's something that I remember not thinking it was actively bad, but that I just didn't. I would never really consider it part of the franchise. Like, it's not important enough where I would say you have to watch the movie after you watch the series or anything like that. Before I throw it to you, I'll just give you the critic ratings here. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 98% on the tomatometer. It says a triumphant coda to a beloved series. Deadwood the movie will satisfy fans longing for a little fucking closure. On IMDb, it's at 7.4 out of 10. And on Metacritic, it's at 86 out of 100, which means universal acclaim.
Yeah.
So, I've talked a lot, and I've probably exposed my hand about what I think about Deadwood the movie, although maybe things have changed a little bit on the rewatch. What did you think of Deadwood the movie?
Say, Bullock, a fella not many hours left to order his affairs. Applied them that remained, naming such purposes that he'd give primacy.
Deal me in or don't, Al. I'd not be fucked halfway up.
Her stopped by, wanted to bury the hatchet. Pool revenue and influence in exchange for Trixie's life. Planning to run telephone wires across others' property. Lumber lies at his claim.
Him conveying that to you, you said fucking what?
I let the offer sit.
To what fucking end?
You ever think, Bullock, of not going straight at a thing?
No.
I actually really liked it. I noticed the writing thing pretty much right away. There was something about the dialogue that it felt more put on than natural. Like the show, the way that they speak sounds very natural.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of the dialogue right up front that felt a lot more put on. Like, honestly, specifically, the opening shot with Jane, where she delivers like a soliloquy in a way that felt very theatrical and not the way that they usually do it on the show.
Yeah, yeah. When she's on the horseback looking down at the town. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a couple other bits where I felt like the language they were using was more Hollywood Western than David Milch.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, as far as the story that they were telling, I actually really liked it. I was surprised more hadn't changed. I mean, a lot has changed, but I was surprised more hadn't changed. And I the one thing I was on the fence about, because I liked where they kind of sent everybody, is I liked what they were doing with Al from like a 10,000 foot view, but I couldn't decide if it was a bit of a if it wasn't in character for the kind of guy that he was in the show. Because what I liked about it was one of the larger images that they give you is that, you know, everybody looks different except Al. Al wears the same shit. He's doing the same stuff. So clearly everybody's moving on except him. And, you know, he's dying because the Deadwood that he knew, the world that he knew is dying, and Al can't change. I wasn't sure, like for the story that they're telling here, I really liked that analogy, or that image and metaphor or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But I always saw Al as someone with a much further view than a lot of other people. Like that was the whole thing that we talked about with him and Tolliver, was that Tolliver was very, like, couldn't see down the road, but Al could.
Right.
And I didn't feel like
Tolliver has short-term interests.
Yes.
Al sees the long con or the long game. Yeah. Yeah.
And Al being the one who was just stuck basically back in the series, I wasn't sure if I was jiving with that treatment of him. But the story that they told in the movie I thought was really good, and I liked the way that it ended, and I really liked the final shot of Trixie out on his balcony wearing his coat, taking over the gem saloon. I like that a lot.
Yep.
Overall I thought it was good. I found it oddly like emotionally affecting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think these characters on the show are just so well defined and so well rounded and so acted that it's the rare reunion type show where I actually do kind of care about where these people are and who makes it out alive and stuff. Like I was devastated when they killed Charlie. Like that was just cruel.
It is, yeah.
But I don't know. It's like they did such a good job of making these characters in the show like real life people that you end up caring about.
Yeah.
That seeing them actually down the road I thought was rather affecting.
Yeah, my big takeaway from the rewatch is that I still think this is kind of a C plus of a finale for me, if you want to consider it a finale. I like it more as an idea than I like its execution, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically the big thing I have with it is that I don't find it particularly interesting to watch. It's which is kind of like not that it doesn't have anything to say, but I don't feel that there's a lot of moment to moment kind of like excitement that it generates in me, or like interest in what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that just like, I have to go back to the Milch writing. To me, it's something I noticed the first time we watched it, is that the writing here feels different than it does on the show. It's really noticeable. I would say it as the big thing to me is that I don't think there's a single requotable line in this movie, which is odd. Like the episodes have, I wouldn't pick I can't think of a single quote in this movie that I would put as the tagline for what I'm going to put on the podcast episode.
I've got one, because it's the way that I want to respond to anyone who asks me how someone else is, mm-hmm. and where I say, collecting her portion of gloom and dismay, just like the rest of us.
I generally find it to be an unquotable version, which I think ties into how the Milch's writing had changed and how the group writing session that sort of churned out the movie was. And I also just think that it's a case of, to me, what makes the dialogue, like, to me, a big distinction between the movie and the show comes down to the writing, in that I find that the movie's writing is much more straight ahead, and I can easily grok everything that's happening in this movie. There's no moment where two characters have a conversation and I go, what the fuck are they talking about? That was kind of like a big charm of the show for me. And here, the writing feels much more straight ahead and much more like, I'm going to explain to you everything that is happening right now, and in words and phrases that you are going to understand and not be confused at all about what Hearst is trying to do, or why Charlie Utter is fighting back against it, or why Seth and Alma feel the way that they do. It all feels very blunt, and I don't really like that. I think that ties into the lack of quotability, and also just like it feels different from the show.
Yeah. I also thought, like, I couldn't decide if Hearst straight up just murdering Charlie was something that he would do that blatantly because of how much power he now had, or if it was unbelievable because it was so blatant. You know what I mean?
I thought the the more unbelievable thing to me was, why doesn't he keep bidding on the land?
Right. Yeah.
He's got more money than Alma Garrett does, right? Like, he could just, why I didn't understand that at all, why he gave up, because he's not the kind of character that will go like, well, this isn't financially responsible of me at this point to just to spend this much money on this parcel of land. He wants to own that town, and that land is how he does it that way, And so I agree with you. I think that I'll throw it back to you by just saying the larger point is that, or one of the other things that I think about the writing in the movie in general, is that a very long time has passed since the series, and I'm torn about whether or not I think enough characters have appropriately changed their outlook and concerns at this time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I
like the Hearst, like the grudge that they hold against Hearst, I feel should have mellowed a bit by now. And Hearst being the
It
same.
was kind of a defining moment of that town.
Well, I think that
when he killed Ellsworth and all the other shit that went down, that was kind of doesn't get much more. That's tough to forget. I think I know what you're saying, but
so much time has passed is the problem. But and like Hearst is Hearst is kind of the same.
10 years.
It's been, but it's like they're in an entirely new world to me, and some characters have kind of moved on, and some of them can't. Like I guess my larger point is that I feel that the Hearst and Al and Seth stuff is almost too much of a focus of the movie in some ways. Like I feel that Hearst is almost too prominent in this for some reason. Like he doesn't need to be here the entire time. I would have much preferred the 13 years later, this is what the town is now like at this point. And the Hearst thing feels like too much of a movie thing going on. Like when Bullock drags the guy out and he's got the noose around his neck, he's like, "Tell me who did this," and then he gets shot. It's like this is kind of weird. I don't really like this in the Deadwood thing, and it's all because the Hearst plot feels like it has to be big and it has to be pushing things in a direction. And I personally don't really like it. I wish it had been a little bit more reserved and low key.
Yeah, I think having Hearst show up is in the way that he does is really just a product of what this is.
Yep.
Because I think I think doing something. I think when you got 2 hours or an hour and a half or however long this is,
150. It's actually kind of long.
150.
Yeah, 150.
You need something that's going to get things moving right away.
Yep.
And I think Hearst is really the one thing from the show that is going to be instantly. People will instantly be able to
like
hook
trigger
onto
you, like into that memory,
yeah. And the thing is though, it's like I would say like I don't even know if he needed to kill anybody. Like just almost the fact of him just being there.
Yes,
I feel like would have been enough of a hornet's nest stir to like work up that tension that the show was so good at. I mean, obviously killing Charlie is a huge inciting incident for the entire episode. But,
Dayton Kelly had words in the Bible about he thought it was bullshit that his character got killed in the movie. Yeah. Just by saying like, and I kind of get his point. Like, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'll let you respond to me. You had a very good point there, which is that the movie's trying to sort of kick you in from the end of the series into the movie, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the problem for me there is that it feels too much like there's too strong of a connection between the two. Like enough time has passed where the first thing being Hearst out of everyone's mouths in this movie feels odd to me. That like nothing has really ended since the end of the series. And I think that the like Hearst killing Charlie to me feels weird for the character of Hearst because Hearst has ascended to such a powerful level that I don't feel he needs to do stuff like this.
Exactly.
Anymore.
Yeah. That's the thing is but it's this weird thing with Hearst though, right? Because like,
is that his nature, I guess.
That's kind of what everybody's dealing with in the movie is, Al is the one who hasn't moved on and it's killing him, but everyone else who projects as having moved on ultimately has to make the decision for themselves whether or not they really have or if they are just the person they were 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So I think it can go I appreciate it from that standpoint, but I do see another version where Hearst is less actively just murdering people and more like where the big action of the movie happens at the end at the wedding, like the show did.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that wedding, I was like, oh my God, someone's gonna fucking die. I don't know if I can deal with this.
These placer acres that you own, Mr. Utter, captured my attention.
Scouts you sent previous made that clear.
People whose judgment I respect. I say this property's market value at $3,500.
Seems I'm the lone holdout to the path of progress.
By way of abbreviating our back and forth and maybe generating some goodwill, I'd go 500 above. Offer you 4,000 even, cash money.
My father taught his boy beat hell into him might maybe be more accurate. How if early enough on, you credited the settlements was common, bought acreage reasonable, developed them sensible, hung on to them until the market come right, of the day you might could wake up and find you made yourself a respectable investment.
Forward thinking was your father then. And now here's his boy to confirm his papa's prediction.
Contrary-wise, man might could come to a certain special feeling, partial, say, to a piece of ground, a river, bend into the forest like so.
I think that Hearst, because the series started with Deadwood is this illegal encampment, right, on non-U.S. soil, right? So the show is about America coming and sort of absorbing Deadwood into itself. Hearst becoming a senator, to me, is the end of that, where Hearst no longer has to do the sort of like aggressive, violent, everything I want is I have to do things through violence and the threats and everything like that. Hearst has become the thing that at the start of the series everyone was trying to get away from, right? Like he represents the state literally at this point.
Right.
And I just feel that that's what's so confusing for me about him walking away from buying the auction is that he should have, in my opinion, beaten the town down with his incredible amount of resources that he has at that point and taken what he wanted. And at that point, it fits into the series themes of like, in this thing of becoming civilized, you sometimes give up the stuff and you lose some of the battles to other people. I feel like the Charlie Hearst thing, or the Charlie Utter thing was just done as like a way to emotionally get the audience invested. And it felt a little cheap to kill him that way, and not in a way that I feel that Hearst should now be managing his responsibilities and acting as a character.
Yeah, I don't find it unbelievable though, because Hearst is he is the same guy, right?
Yep.
He's not the only difference is he's not interested in gold anymore. He's interested in progress.
Yes.
And he's going to, and he's going to do whatever he has to steamroll anyone who's in front of him in the name of progress.
Yeah.
At least that's the way he would say it.
Yeah.
And so Charlie presenting a roadblock for that, I think it is not unreasonable that would fire up the old George Hearst engines. And I mean, it's not like this stuff didn't happen, like this shit happens all the time. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but like Killers of the Flower Moon is all about stealing land through murdering people.
Yes.
under the safety of the state. So it's like, it's not like this stuff didn't happen. But yeah, I think I don't know if he should have been so outwardly obvious about it. Cause like, in the show, there's always like a little bit of a workaround as to whether or not Hearst was involved. And in this, it's like, no, it was fucking Hearst. Everybody knows it was Hearst.
Yeah, I guess he loudly explains his murderous plot while EB is looking through the wall.
Right, yeah. And even like when they bring Charlie in and he comes out and Bullock is like, you want to explain this? And he's like, well, I have no idea what happened here. Like the entire town is like, come on, guy. We know, everybody knows what happened here.
I guess and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misremembering Hearst. I always felt like the Hearst of the TV show was a man and a character who, while he's prone to violence, uses violence when other methods fail for him. Like he tried to come in and he tried to, sort of finagle deals and get things done. Alma insults him in the show, and that's what pisses him off so much about it. Here, I just come down to, I don't understand why he didn't keep bidding. Like, that's the thing. It's like he seemed like he was more primed for murder than I actually think that he is as a character, I guess, is my problem.
Yeah. I think one of the problems you run into though is because I agree to an extent where he probably should have done more in the movie to hurt them in different ways. Yeah. Because it's basically he kills Charlie and that's essentially it. I mean, obviously that's a huge deal, but they outbid him for the land and they
gets arrested at the very end.
He gets arrested. Bullock ends up stopping the attempt to kill Fields, and they bring frontier justice to the guys that killed Charlie. Yeah. So it's really only the one thing. Whereas I think, there's another version where he is, like you're saying, just steamrolling them in a way that, like, over and over again, like he outbids them for the thing. He does this, does this, and it's all less than blood. He's not shedding blood necessarily while he's doing it, but it's still painful.
Yes.
But you run into a problem then when you get to the end, when the entire town beats the shit out of him. It feels a little bit like, this is a little bit too convenient for an ending, where the whole town just beats up the bed. It's like, this is actually, I think, the second time recently I've mentioned this on a podcast, but do you remember the old SNL bit of, it was the alternate ending to It's a Wonderful Life?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think I talked. Yeah. You can explain it. Yeah.
Was it on was we talking about it on this show?
On the Star Trek show, I think.
On the Star Trek show. Yeah. It's a quote unquote alternate ending to It's a Wonderful Life where Phil Hartman comes in as the brother who lost all the money and says, "I remember what happened to the money. It was Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter took the money." And then George Bailey's like, "Well, let's go get him." And the whole town goes down to Potter's office and take turns beating the shit out of Mr. Potter, which is kind of what happens at the end of this movie. Yeah. And so I think if you like really, really kept laying it on thick, and then this movie ends with the town rising up and kicking the shit out of him, it wouldn't feel as like a Deadwood ending, that's it. I find the ending to be satisfying in like a base cathartic way.
Sure.
But I don't know if that would be the way that it would go on Deadwood traditionally.
Yeah. The ending of this is actually my favorite part of the movie, really. Yeah. Like the last, probably from the wedding scene or the after party scene onward.
My favorite part of the movie is when Hearst goes into the new version of his, it's the color that drives me speech, and he has to stop in the middle because EB's just dancing around because he got a piss.
That felt to me the most Milchian dialogue sequence between those two. Yeah. I think that it's an odd contrast to me, right? Because I think that what I really like is I like the way that they have adjusted the town and the interior decoration, and like everything's a little bit more fancy 10 years down the line. And I really like, they have like those stamped tin ceilings on the ceilings and
love
stuff.
Those.
And I like things like that. I just sort of, and this is purely subjective, I don't think it's a problem because I understand that there's also an approach where not all characters need to be different, but I feel like too many of the characters are still, just to come back to this point, because I want to be clear about it, too many of the characters to me are having the same conversation they had 13 years ago, really.
Sure.
And I know it's hard to make a movie come in fresh and have something else to say about it, but that really stuck out to me this time, is that like Trixie's rage at Hearst is still like, it just bubbles up this moment, and it's like, nothing has really changed. And I understand they went through this traumatic event and everything, but I feel like not enough of the characters are for someone like Bullock, right? Who now seems a little bit more old and mature. He's still the core Bullock character, but he's a little bit more in control of himself at this point in his life. For that character, he has changed, but drives of the moment have not changed, if that makes sense, like from the end of the series. So I thought that was just kind of a strange like juxtaposition of things, because I like the way that the characters were acting. I just feel that because these characters are now different people, I almost felt that they would have different reactions to the end of the third season that we're picking up from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like things should be just different, I guess. And I think that's reflected in Al. That's why I call this like a C+. Like there are moments I see it. Like I see it in Al, which is that Al is now old enough where he is no longer the primary driver of the town. Bullock is clearly, like Bullock makes the decisions in town at this point. And I like stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's not across the board uniformly great in some ways, even though if I like the Al stuff and not as crazy about the Bullock stuff in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I do think it, I don't know if suffers is the word I'd use, because I think your mileage varies with this stuff, but there is more, this is a reunion movie type stuff than I expected there to be. In that, I think kind of what you're saying, where like, while I expected there to be some sort of moment between Bullock and Alma, I was surprised at how much they did with it.
Yeah, aren't they over it at this? But that's kind of my
like,
yeah.
They were kind of over it in the show.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
And so, and I mean, clearly they had a connection or whatever, but like it's been 13 years and he's got 4 kids now. And
yes, you just
who
need
knows
the
what
one
the fuck
scene.
she's been doing.
You need them making eyes when they see each other for the first time, and that's it. You don't need this.
Yeah,
he's trying to grab his dick at the dance or whatever's going on.
I think like a great, you have the scene where they're kind of cordial to each other, and then you have like the moment at the auction where they kind of like lock eyes, right. And they realize that they've worked together for the town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a symbolic union by working together.
Yeah. I don't know if they. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of people who are big Alma and Bullock shippers.
If there's anybody, can you be a shipper if they actually get together in the show? I thought that was.
I mean, I guess if they're not currently together,
yeah. I guess you can fantasize about the future. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't want to sound overly negative. It's just that I think that the downsides to this kind of are what separates it from the show for me. And I think your point about Alma and Bullock is a really good example of that, because we've talked about in the series how the themes kind of repeats and characters make the same actions. It's really just to me that this passage of time seems to be implying that things should be different now at this point, because that's why I like the Swearingen line, is because the Swearingen characterization is clearly Milt's trying to come to terms with the end of his own life, which is imminent at this point because of his diagnosis. And you see that in Swearingen, and I feel that the change in Swearingen could have spread a little bit further into the town, I think, and had a few more characters had different things to say at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also the movie is kind of about how these people and this town all affected each other.
Yeah.
So I can see why essentially what they're doing is the high school reunion kind of thing, where everybody's got different lives, but you put them back in that a certain place. It evokes a certain time, which causes them to regress. Isn't the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you kind of slip back into your old patterns. And
yeah, if only for a moment or whatever. And so you've, which I think is nice because it allows character closure for the show for the show through the movie, where you've got Bullock, who is presented at the start of the movie as someone who's a little bit more mellowed out, but when it's time for the class reunion, his shithead high school days, Bullock shows up and he gets really violent and he almost beats the shit out of Van Gogh there.
Yes, yeah.
From Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And it takes
lets Hearst be beaten by the mob for a little bit.
Yeah. And it takes reliving those things in order for him to move past them finally. You know, that's when he
he sees his
goes home,
family.
says,
I like the shot of he sees Martha, and that's what snaps him back into things have changed at this point.
And I think that's kind of how it is with everybody, where it's they're kind of all being brought back to that moment as a test to see whether or not they can move past it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the only one that was, the one that I stood out to me as like, we probably didn't need any of this, even though as much as I like seeing these characters, was Joni and Jane.
Yeah.
Where it's this is fun. I like this stuff, and I loved the ending for Jane.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she finally in that moment gets to do something brave and saves Bullock's life. But, you know, I don't know.
I liked the first Joni scene. I liked Joni as running this brothel, and she's kind of pissed off and like cynical about stuff. I thought that I actually found their happy ending to be unfitting, because I found that ending to be much more suitable for Joni, really. I could see that character never quite coming to grips with what makes her happy and just descending into this sort of like, she becomes basically Sai's shadow in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. I think it probably makes more sense to have them I don't even know if it makes sense to have them wind up together, but if you wanted to have them wind up together, I think you could do it in a more not conditional, but Jane is making they're making the commitment together regardless of what it might mean, instead of happily ever after, let's go to France, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's Joni's in kind of a shitty place, and she's, you know, and she's like, this is who I am, and Jane's like, well, I am who I am. We either do this together or we do it apart and we die lonely, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Which is not exactly a great, like, wedding speech or anything, but it probably fits those characters.
You, having so lived in recollection, Marshal, it is my considerable happiness to see you again.
No less a happiness, Mrs. Ellsworth, than to sing you for me.
As a dream might come alive to draw a breath.
You know, the reason I like the ending so much is that I think the ending in this movie has time to do what I wanted the end of the third season to do, which is to focus on the happiness and the bonds for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like it, because it does the thing that I don't think that the end of the third season managed to do, because it ran out of time, basically, is to show us how no matter what happens to the town, there's still the bonds of community are still the thing that hold everything else together. Like, no matter what happens around them, it's still the character interactions and the relationships and stuff like that works really well. Like, I think the ending shot of this is kind of perfect, which is just that Al and Trixie holding hands on the bed as he's seemingly imminently about to die. I like that stuff. I wanted Deadwood to end on on that kind of energy, which I think is the best thing that the movie does, which it gives it a chance to do that. And that's why I like the ending so much. The one thing I don't like about possibly the worst ending is, boy, they did Harry dirty, who's just a fucking turncoat.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to murder Bullock. He sells out the general to those guys and everything like that. Harry is just fallen from his heights of being a fireman, obviously.
Hey, it's been... I didn't even realize who that was.
Yeah, it's Harry Manning, the sheriff.
The guy who wants to be the fire guy?
Yeah, who worked with Tom Nuttall at the number 10. Man.
He needs to...
He went down a dark path.
He looks very healthy. I did not recognize him.
Full of vigor.
Did not recognize him.
Con Stapleton
that's sad.
It is, isn't it?
That's depressing. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Con Stapleton
he was such a
kind of an easygoing goofball.
Yeah, like an affable kind of guy.
Yeah.
It's weird that they would, that sucks. I didn't even realize that. I wish you hadn't told me that.
Well, apparently, running the fire engine squad has run up his debts or something, because he just needs money no matter what the cost from George Hurst.
Honestly, I assumed he was the guy driving the fire engine.
Yeah, I know.
that character who I didn't realize was this other character.
I know. Yeah, we get the fire truck, which is basically a big bucket of water that they pull around while the firemen run behind it.
Modern technology, baby.
That's a scene not crazy about. That's a very Deadwood movie thing where Bullock sets the telephone poles on fire.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about that. That's something I'm not particularly interested in seeing. I guess, did you have any other thoughts about the plot in general, or we can say that to the end? I wanted to ask you about character appearances and stuff like that, but any characters? Obviously, Cy Tolliver is missing because Powers Booth had passed away. Did you miss anybody besides Cy or anything like that?
I was shocked that Cy barely got a mention.
Yeah.
Like his name just slipped out from Joni once, and that was the only time he's even brought up.
Yeah. She plasters her name over the Bella Union sign. It says like Joni Stubbs' Bella Union or something.
I was surprised by that. I did miss him, but at the same time, I don't know where he would have fit in.
No, he has no role at this point.
He's honestly, Al is kind of both of those characters put together in this movie to a certain extent, But just to touch on the plot, or I don't know, maybe it's characters as well. But I thought I found that this movie had a tough time. That's not the way to put it. I thought the thing with Hearst coming after Trixie at the beginning was going to be a much bigger deal. Like I thought that was going to be the thing.
Right.
That was going to be the inciting incident for everything else. And then they killed Charlie. So, and then the stuff with Trixie takes a back seat for about 65 minutes.
Well, that's the
comes up again at the end.
That's the other. Sorry, I don't mean to keep going back, but like, why does Hearst 13 years later all of a sudden put the dots together?
Yeah.
It's just like Trixie's yelling at him, and he has like the flashback to her flashing her tits at him before she shot, and that's like him putting it together. That's another kind of moment that I was like, I don't think they needed to connect this quite this way, but I don't know.
I think it would have been more interesting if he didn't go after her, like if he acknowledged it, but he's like,
he's over
above that, because I don't think, I guess depending on how you want to read this. Because he does come in and say, I was fooled, but, whether or not you want to actually believe him. I still maintain that the more interesting reading of the end of the show is that he kind of knows that the woman they killed isn't the right woman.
Right.
But it's just like the fact that someone paid for it is enough for him.
Yeah, and he wants to get out of there at that point. He wants to leave the town. Yeah.
And so, like, him coming back and specifically going after her, I was like, I don't know, he feels kind of this feels like inconsequential to him. Yes. It should be,
Yeah. Yeah. I was kind of struck by, on a character level, I think that the movie focuses on the female characters quite prominently. I was surprised by how much Trixie and Soulstar is not a female character, but like the Trixie and Saul relationship probably gets as much play in this as it does in the entire series, which is
absolutely
weird to me. And, it ends with, I'm a little bit surprised, it's fitting, but it's a little surprising that Trixie and Al are the final two on screen with each other and stuff like that. So I was some characters some characters I think work better than others. Like I don't think the Doc is really necessary in this movie. He's just kind of there because he needs to make an appearance.
I was happy to see him though, because he got really short shrift in the third season. And he's not in the finale at all, I don't think.
No, he's not. Wu is in this one kind of inconsequentially, even though I really do like the idea that his son speaks English and translates for him. I like that concept. But, other characters have like sort of minor things like Dan and Johnny are barely important in this one, and they're just kind of hanging out. They don't have tremendous amount to do.
Honestly, probably aged the best out of the whole cast. Dan looked good. Dan and Johnny both look pretty good.
Yeah, Johnny looks very much like his character in The Room, but they have aged well. It struck me. The movie, I wouldn't take bets because the cast is so large, but I was surprised by the characters that chose to become prominent, or that Milch chose to be prominent, like Bullock, Trixie, Saul, and Hearst, I think, are the surprises to me in the context of being a movie about this.
Yeah. I think what's nice about it, though, is, while I know what you're saying about how you're surprised people haven't moved on, I just think that there is something nice, there is something fitting about this unifying traumatic memory coming back to town.
Yep.
Hearst, which is then triggering all these things in everybody else. Even for Johnny, like, when do you think the last time Johnny thought about Jen was? Until Hearst comes to town, and then he sees that other girl. That other girl, the most Milchian plot line of the whole movie, where it's like,
girl.
oh, what's this girl gonna do? And the answer is nothing.
She is a weird. It's not even that you know, normally in a movie, her character would be the character that every other character explains how the town works to.
Yeah.
And it's not really necessary here. So I'm confused why she's there at all.
She was kind of like the Kristen Bell character over again.
Yeah. With just no plot behind her. She's just there. Yeah.
You know, I guess she's there ultimately for Trixie to impart her wisdom on at the end.
Yeah, it shows Al also refuses a blowjob too, right? Because he's a different character at this point. And so it's showing that kind of difference. And she's the new character who is going to provide that to him. But he really is a character at this point who really just wants to talk and hang out and is okay with that.
Also, I'd be shocked if his dick works in that.
Yeah, I know. His liver's failed.
Condition.
There's a lot of blood circulation problems going on.
God bless that girl, though. She was ready to go.
Yeah, well, she's new.
That was a tall order.
It is. Yeah, this is not.
Given how frequently he's probably pissing himself.
Yeah. Any other characters? There's no Silas Adams, unfortunately. I would have liked to have seen him. There's no Hawkeye, which was devastating to you, I'm sure.
Of course. I was waiting for him to come swooping in.
We do get Garrett Dillahunt as drunk number 2.
I was going to bring up Garrett Dillahunt.
Yep.
Yeah, when I saw him the first time, I was like, that's got to be him. And then they give him a second shot where you can definitely see that it's him, which that was very nice. It was nice to see him.
His line is funny, too.
Such a...
He's
what's
like,
his line?
His line is like, why don't you die out on the streets, George Hearst, like my dad?
Yeah. He's got such a unique looking face that it's really hard to hide him, even behind a giant beard.
Yeah. They stuck him prominently in the camera. They gave him his.
They definitely did.
And I think, I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast last time, but the Anthrax and Lemmy from Motorhead are somewhere in this movie. I don't know if you found them or if you saw them.
Oh, it's the movie? I thought they were in the finale.
I might be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. I think you're
it's
right.
the finale.
Yeah,
I think Lemmy was dead by this point.
That makes more sense. And the pictures I've seen of them are older, so it must have been the finale.
Yeah.
So ignore me. It's just Garrett Dillahunt in this one.
It was nice to see Tom Nuttall just keeping it in the pocket there over at the bar.
I thought that the difference between the bars was nicely shot in this. Like Tom Nuttall's bar is much dingier looking than the Gem is, and I think that
hasn't
they shot
changed.
It well. Yeah,
all the other bars have kind of changed.
Right.
Like the Gem has a theater in the back of it.
Yes,
no Langrish in this movie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no Langrish.
Too busy running his empire with his
media,
shithead
his
kids.
Media. The kids should have made an appearance as guest stars in this one. Yeah, Nolan Grish. Aunt Lou is in it, which is a nice touch.
I was going to say, did she come back with Hearst, or has she just been there the whole time?
I think she's been there the whole... What was the last time we saw her in Deadwood?
Because I think she leaves with Hearst at the end of the season, doesn't she?
Oh, does she? I don't remember seeing her at the very end. After Odell is killed, she runs off. I don't know if we see her.
Oh, maybe that's what I don't remember. For some reason, I thought she left with Hearst. I was surprised to see her there.
Passed when I took what Saga gave me. I'd pray I wouldn't wake up.
You gutless cunt, don't you speak that way to me again.
Nor neither am I saying I feel that way now, is my point.
You give me a goddamn kiss and say, I promise I won't fold, no matter how sad I get. Or just don't say a word at all, then just go ahead and give me a kiss and don't say a word.
Yeah, Richardson had died. I think the actor playing Richardson had died.
That's what I assumed. Yeah.
And Farnham has a brief moment in the sun here.
He's got a couple good small bits when he uses the telephone. That was excellent.
Yes, that was when he's yelling into the telephone. Anyone else? Merrick gets a decent scene.
Yeah, Merrick gets to be on camera but not open his mouth, just so everybody forgets that they gave Jeffrey Jones an acting job.
I like that when George Hurst is arrested, his camera is perfectly positioned to take a picture of Hurst being arrested, which is good. There's no Blaznoff, unfortunately.
No. I was another one of those, like, this is the reunion movie type things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought having the general there was a little convenient.
Yes.
Like, I don't really know if we needed him back. That could have been anybody.
Yes. Or that him and him and Charlie being close enough to sort of hang out with each other, I guess, is the implication.
That's
there.
true. Yeah. I guess the scene he has with Bullock might not have been as impactful if it was just some random guy. Although maybe it would be. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a good scene, I thought. You're talking about the general's lying in bed after his beating. Yeah, and he cries, and Bullock, "What you crying for?" Bullock cries about Charlie. That was good too. Yeah, as we're approaching the hour, I guess we can start moving into a summary thing. It's just I do like this one. You sound a little bit more positive than it on me. I just really, honestly, the biggest letdown to me is that I found myself looking at my watch in a way that I never did on the series while watching this. Yeah, I just it a little bit, especially the first hour of this movie. I think it kind of drags a little bit, and when you don't have the great old Deadwood series dialogue propelling it, I feel like it doesn't quite hold my interest in the same way. I do like the second half better when the Hearst storyline kind of wraps up and they move into the town at large and stuff. And I appreciate what they tried to do. It's just that I think this is an example of something that I'm totally okay with it. It's fine that it exists. I wouldn't say don't watch it, but it's a case that proves my larger idea about, like, in the Discord, people, and Kyle had posted the person on Reddit who's like, I heard this show doesn't have an ending. Should I still watch it? And if the movie had not like, this movie adds no more closure to the series than the end.
I don't know about that.
Well, it adds no more in a way that means anything to me, I guess. So it's like it's not additive, and it proves, in my opinion, the idea that, like, you don't necessarily need closure for something to be good. It's an example of something just bringing closure, and I'm not sure I actually needed it in the first place.
Yeah, I think what's lacking for you is that there's I think the movie is bringing closure to the characters, but I think what's missing from it for you is that it's not bringing any closure to the philosophy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
And so I think if that's what you're looking for, then you might come away a bit more cold from this.
Yeah, that's why I think that's why I liked Al. I wish more characters had these sort of weird inversion Al philosophy where, like, things have changed now. What does that mean for all these characters? And I think that's a good point. So thank you for pointing that out.
Sure. Yeah, the only other character I wanted to bring up was Patrick Swayze's brother is in this.
Is he? Who is he?
He's the other assassin who looks exactly like Patrick Swayze.
Oh, I thought you were calling him Van Gogh. Is that someone else?
No, that's the Scottish guy.
Oh, that's the Scottish guy. I was thinking Van Gogh because he has the he does look like Swayze, doesn't he? Yeah.
It's his brother. It's his younger brother, Don Swayze. Which sounds like a joke, but is 100% the truth.
It must be his younger brother then, I guess. Right?
Yeah, he's younger. Yeah.
Yeah, younger brother. Interesting. Well, I want a Roadhouse fight sequence in the gym with Don Swayze.
Yeah,
taking the mantle down. I like that Irish guy. I like that Irish assassin. And
yes.
What kind of contract does Hearst have where this guy doesn't go, fuck you, I'm out of here, and just leave without trying to break into the jail?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Like, that scene, that was a scene where I was like, I don't know about this scene. Like, this is, I'll give you an extra $50 if you break into a jail and murder this other guy.
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
Yeah, I'll agree to that, and then just get out of here.
Let's say that I will do that, and then you never see me again.
Yeah, that was weird. So I didn't mean to interrupt. Final thoughts about the movie, I guess, at this point for you.
Yeah, I liked it. I think from a character standpoint, I do think it is a nice wrap up for the show. I don't think if the show was given the time to end itself, I don't think it would end like this. I think that's the big difference.
Back in like 07, you mean like
yeah.
you have a good step back into a time machine?
Yeah, I think this is a bit more of a victory lap, if you want to use that terminology.
100%. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Which, you
get that
mileage
chance.
may vary.
Yeah, you get that.
I didn't find I found myself surprisingly affected by seeing the characters again so much older and seeing them interact with each other again, and I was interested in how they were going to respond to each other. Like, sorry
to interrupt, but yeah, like a big positive for me is I in the way that I really like Swearengen's change. Like, it's not all negative. There's some good mixed in here. I really love the Seth and Martha relationship in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I really like that. But like, I'm never not going to enjoy Gerald McRaney as George Hurst.
Yeah, yeah.
As long as it's a B plus or a B level George Hurst, I'm going to have a good time watching that.
Right. Yep.
And it's just it's great to see everybody who gave such great performances in the show come back and do it one more time.
Yeah.
But I totally understand what you're saying, and I do agree that there is a edge to the philosophy of the show that is missing from the movie, definitely. And I think that's 100% Milch.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is just really all my negatives can kind of be funneled down into. I think that David Milch's mind was starting to slip at this point, or clearly it was, and it resulted in something that is not quite what I was expecting or kind of would hope for from a something that I would want to consider the end of it.
I was actually surprised how much flashing back that they did.
I was just about to ask you, what did you think of the flashbacks to the show?
Well, I was surprised by it until I kind of was locking into the idea of what they were doing, where it was sort of like everybody had moved on, but then all of a sudden they're ripped back to that intense era.
Yep.
So it didn't really bother me that much. But at first when they started doing it, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like this show to do that. But
yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. What I appreciate about it is that they're all non-dialogue flashbacks.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, it's all just images.
Yeah, so
that's like when Hearst comes rolling into town, and I think it's Trixie who sees the flashback of Ellsworth being brought back with his head blown open.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was pretty effective.
Yep.
Where it's like, oh shit, yeah, this guy just came back into town and all this stuff is probably coming back. Like, I think that stuff worked pretty well, as much as I was surprised that they were doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The good book, Marshall, says the Lord chooses amongst his witnesses them be thought least likely.
Is that so?
You should ought to know. Before what happened, Mr. Utter seemed to me a different man. Like a weight had come off his shoulders. What else they say about the Lord's witnesses?
What else?
Their defects notwithstanding, they testify to his wondrous glory. Singing he was at the end, Marshall. About walking the valley. Joyfully hear and behold.
I'll go with my most unnecessary scene.
I was just going to say, I wish they had a moment where Hearst looked at Dan and they flash back to Dan killing Captain Turner. Just drowning him in the fucking mud or whatever he did.
Pulls his eye out and hits him with a log.
Pulling his eye out,
yeah. My most unnecessary scene was the the brief flashback where they prove that Charlie Utter got shot in the head and he's dying in front of us. That was
kind of weird.
I didn't know what the point of that was. We knew he was dead, but I guess they had to show us or something.
Yeah, I understood the one from the general's point of view, but when they did one from the point of view of the murderer. Oh, you know what I think it was? I think it was just because they were talking to Hearst, and Hearst says, were there any witnesses? And he's like, nope. And then they cut back to they're definitely being a witness.
Yeah, so I guess they just have to. I don't know if I need to see Charlie suffering. Like, he's still clearly alive as his brain is going out of his head. It felt unnecessary, but who knows? Cool.
Did you know that Bonnie and Clyde?
Yeah.
Stay with me here, guys. Clyde's brother, I think it was, the other guy who was in the group, at a certain point in their running from the law, he got shot in the head, and his skull blew open, but he didn't die.
Yep.
And he just lived for the next month or so with his brain exposed.
Yeah.
Like, he just had a big hole in his head and with no skull, just his brain, and just had to cover it with a cloth.
Yeah. Who's that? The famous story of, he's kind of like a famous sort of example of brain science.
Oh, the guy who got the railroad spike through the head?
Yeah, his name is Phineas Gage or something like that.
That's ironic.
Who was apparently I think he was an asshole who became not an asshole, right? Was that the way it worked?
I think, or possibly the other way around. I can't remember, but I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, well, apparently he was working on the railroads back then, and there was an explosion or something, and a railroad spike just went through his head, and it damaged a very specific part of his brain that led to a complete personality change after his recovery. When he recovered, which is impressive enough, but he was a different person after it happened.
I saw something on Twitter recently, which might be 100% made up. I don't know anymore, but
it's called X.
Yeah, no, it's not.
X.com.
About a guy from the Civil War who got a bullet in the forehead, but managed to survive. And there was a picture of him as an old man, and he just had an inch deep impression in the middle of his forehead. And for years afterwards, pieces of metal would fall out of the hole.
Just hold a magnet to it.
Yeah.
He would have made a great Kardashian.
Human body.
Yeah.
Human body is both shockingly durable and shockingly fragile.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's the match point thing. It's you could go either one way or just a centimeter this way and you're dead. Then that's the difference between
that guy gets a spike through the brain.
Yep.
And he comes out, not only does he survive, but he comes out better for it. Bob Saget trips and whacks his head on a table and he's dead.
That's right. That's right.
Bet you didn't see that comparison coming.
Liam Neeson's wife fell over standing on the bunny slope at a ski resort.
Is that what happened? Is that how she died?
Yeah. She was just on a bunny slope standing around. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was tragic, but it's it's just stupid little accidents. They'll just take you out.
Hug your loved ones, everyone.
That's right. Even if it's 13 years later and everything's the same or different. So that's it. We covered Deadwood, the movie, which came out in 2019. That's it. Clay, thanks very much for watching Deadwood with me.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad that I could finally make my way through the show. It's one of those shows that's just, I think it's a really rewarding show to watch, and I think has a lot of rewatchability built into it.
Yeah.
And definitely is something that I will put on in the future as I'm working or something, because it's just letting that show, you can focus on the show really intently if you want to, but you can also just let it wash over you, and I think it works equally both ways.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's been fun. I do find it very rewatchable. It remains my personal favorite show of all time. I think that the series itself is quite excellent. And it's been fun rewatching it and thinking about it and talking about it. It took a year, but we got it done. And now the movie's over as well. So that's it for Deadwood. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the show. This was something pretty. You can support the show at patreon.com/The Penske File. This one's ended, but we got a whole bunch of other shows going on, too. We have a Star Trek show. Clay and Amanda have a Rotten Horror Picture Show where they talk about horror films from the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Greatest Horror list, which is changing all the time. So that's probably still ongoing. He's got Badass, which is the animated Batman show with Sean Murphy. Whole bunch of stuff. You can go to thepenskyfile.com thepenskyfile.com, and all the podcasts are there. You can absorb all of them that way. I guess that's it, Clay. We're done with Deadwood, and we got another podcast under our belts. We're done forever with Something Pretty. So, thanks again, everybody. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
Have you settled on what you want to do on Patreon for next year? You wanted to do a music thing?
Yeah, I'm going to do a music. You and Amanda are doing like a theme of the Halloween movies for the 12 months, and we do a Patreon once a month. I'm probably going to do something music related.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and those are the other thing the Patreon has, that we always do like one movie a month, or we're going to get back to that now that Deadwood's over. But yeah, it'll be a music thing for me. You will have our movie, and then you and Amanda will have your Halloween series for all the Halloween movies.
I was just trying to think if there was an equivalent show, like an HBO show, that I would want to do.
It's 12 episodes long. Somehow.
Yeah, a limited podcast about. And the only one that popped into my head was Band of Brothers, but I don't even know what we could talk about without needing to do a lot of research.
That's kind of the Wire problem, right? Like, I couldn't cover the Wire on a podcast because I'd be like, you'd hear me just unfolding newspapers in the background as I'm talking on the podcast. You're like, well, back then.
Episode 6 of Band of Brothers was great. It was crazy when Joe Toy got his leg blown off. I don't really know what else to say. It's just documenting the war.
It's all on the screen, people. It's all on the screen.
Great show, though. Great show.
Yeah, maybe we'll find something else to do. We'll figure something else out in the future, but no immediate plans. But everyone can just follow along on the YouTube channel and all that stuff if they want to. Cool. We're done. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This was the Something Pretty podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for checking out all the other stuff. And we will see you somewhere down the line in maybe 13 years or not. And when we're looking at each other, Clay, and we tell God to stay in heaven, and then the scene blacks
that was
out on our life.
Great final line.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to David Milch. Thank you to all the producers, writers, and actors of this great show. And we will see you guys next time.
Our Father, which art in heaven.
Let him fucking stay there.